Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the AIMHO 365 webinar, Managing the Creepy Crawlers, Bedbugs, presented by James Tobin, the Assistant Director of Residence Life at MSU Bozeman. I'm Shadeen Say from the AIMHO 365 Committee. A big thank you to James for developing this presentation and offering to share his knowledge within the region. We will be taking questions during the presentation, so please feel free to use that chat feature on the right side of your screen to ask any question. If everyone logged in can test the chat feature by typing in your campus name, as well as how many attendees are viewing with you today, we'd greatly appreciate it. This webinar is being recorded and will be uploaded to the AIMHO 365 YouTube page, and the link will be available through the aimho.org website, so feel free to jump back on at a later date to use for your training purposes. And as always, please be checking with the aimho.org website often for future webinars, as well as submit webinar proposals and offer to present future webinars. Again, a huge thank you to our presenter today, James Tobin from Montana State University, Bozeman. James, we're all yours.
Sounds good. Thank you, Shadeen, and I appreciate the opportunity to present a little bit about what's going on here at Montana State University. A little bit of background for you all. I am an Assistant Director of Residence Life. I currently work in our main office and supervise our administrative functions with applications and contracts. And then I also work with our summer housing operation. And one of the unique opportunities that I have is that I also get to work with our custodial operation, which I'll go into in a little bit. But as we've kind of talked about this wonderful topic of bed bugs over the lunch hour, we're going to try to keep it as factual as possible and kind of go through our process and not freak anybody out with the topic of bed bugs. It can be a little overwhelming, especially as we've seen here at MSU, and hopefully our experience over the last 2 years where we've really seen this impact our campus, we can share a little bit of knowledge with you all. Our hope is that we can also maybe gain some information from anybody out there that has also dealt with them. I will share with you what our kind of deployment has been here at MSU and open it up for any questions as we go through and more specifically at the end. As we talk a little bit about today, couple of things just for kind of an overview. We hope to give you a little bit of information on bed bugs and kind of the facts that we've been able to find through our research. Background about how we've been dealing with it here at Montana State University, issues and struggles that we've had in managing them, both internally with our staff, but also with our students and how they've been helping or not helping, depending on the issue and what's going on. And then current processes and solutions that we've found that worked here that could be adapted at other campuses, and recommendations or lessons that we've learned through our initiatives and through our expert research and our information here. A little bit of background about Montana State. We are a public institution with about 15,600 students. We are expanding rapidly. When we look at both our residence life and family graduate housing, we have about 5,000 students. And most of the presentation today will be about our residence life or residence hall experience. However, most of that is applicable both to an apartment style as well as what we have here on our campus with our graduate housing. A little bit of, excuse me, a little bit of information more in depth about my role with managing bed bugs. As I said, I oversee our custodial operation. We have one custodian supervisor. We have about 38 custodians. I work with all of them, and we've, as you'll hear, we've kind of transitioned some of the management of this to them. But I also have served as our point person with customer service. I've served as our point person for the campus, and it's kind of become a little bit more education than I ever expected in my role in residence life. It's been exciting, but it has also been challenging at the same time, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through. One thing that I would want to share as we go through this is I figured as I put the presentation together, not knowing where everybody's knowledge is and expertise is, I figured at this point I'd like to go a little bit through what we've learned in our experience with bed bugs. So a little bit of fact behind them. They are parasites that seek people and animals out to feed on. They are blood-feeding parasites, and so that's where the brown color comes from, being fed through the blood, and then they will end up feeding on people. As they grow, they will start out very small, and then they will grow to about an apple seed size. I do have some pictures to show you all as far as the size, as far as what we've been dealing with here. They are brown colored, they are flat, they are oval with 6 legs and 2 antennae. They're pretty consistent to some other parasites and insects that you'll see. So there has been some confusion about what is the difference between a bed bug and other insects that we might see in our buildings, especially for those of us that have forests and trees around our buildings and kind of managing all of the insects that might climb into our buildings. And one of the hugest misconceptions that we've had to, or largest that we've had to overcome, is that bed bugs do not fly. They don't jump, they have no wings, and so they truly just crawl and walk around. And so as we've been dealing with them, we've tried to tell people that they're not going to fly around the room. If you see them, they move very slowly, they don't move very fast, and they tend to feed at night and hide during the day. One of the research pieces that we have found is that they are very susceptible to that darkness. They like the darkness, and so what we've done is we've actually deployed and we've invested in, high-powered flashlights and high-powered lights, because typically when we're dealing with them during the day when the sun is out and it's a little harder to see. And so we wanted to put a little bit of a graphic to it. This is kind of showing the life cycle of what we've been dealing with. Here at Montana State, we've been dealing with anything from that third instar all the way through the adult. We've been dealing with them very small to very large. We've had a few bed bugs found in a room. We've had complete infestations where you walk into a room and they're literally walking across the floor. And you can very vividly see them walking across the floor, and we've found that they've been there for weeks or months and the students haven't known how to handle them. And so as we've learned and researched and gone into our knowledge base of understanding where bed bugs might be, we have found that all of these on the page on the screen are possible locations of where we have found them. Not one of these locations is kind of null and void to us. The largest area that we have found them is in our mattresses. We have found them in our bed frames. And here at Montana State, we have plywood laminate old bed frames in some of our buildings. And we're working to overcome that, and we're working through that. But bed bugs don't need a lot of space. And in actuality, they don't want a lot of space. They want those small, tight, confined spaces that they can climb into. A lot of our students are bringing furniture, and so they'll bring a couch or they'll bring a chair, and that has caused some issues because bed bugs will crawl directly into those items. And so they'll put a furniture, or they'll put a chair, or they'll put a couch underneath the loft. We've had some issues with that. Carpet, many of our rooms are tile. However, when students bring carpet, they'll bring their favorite shag carpeting to the floor. And so bed bugs will curl inside that. And sometimes we've actually encouraged students to throw that away, buy a new rug once the room is treated. Cracks and crevices in the walls, and locations where there's molding along the base of the room. There's tackboard along the top of the ceiling. Various locations where there could be those little cracks and crevices where they could crawl into. Any location that we have found where the wall meets the ceiling or the floor, the cupboards meet the wall and there's space between there. Picture frames and mirrors, one of the things we actually discovered in our adventures, to say the least, is that 3M strips, they're great, they're awesome to hang things and not leave much of a mark, but bed bugs will get behind 3M strips or between the 3M strip and the frame. And so we've had to be careful with that and actually had people tear down posters and pictures and items on the wall so that we can treat the room appropriately and then rehang those items when we're done. Clothing is one where, we try our best to ensure that we treat everything when we get in there. However, they're not attracted to clothing. They are attracted to those warm spaces. And so as we may have students who pile up their clothes for laundry on the floor or in their closets, and we found that clothing can be a location that is hibernating those bed bugs. Switch plates, outlets, electronics, smoke detectors, again, back to that old adage of kind of like holes in the items, holes in the wall, holes in our electronics, they can get into that. And so that has been a real problem because it's hard to treat some of those electronics. It's hard to treat some of those areas when we can't always get to them. And then probably one of the largest items we've had is our luggage. We have students who obviously go away for vacations. They come in from other places in the country, around the world, and they bring those bed bugs with them. And so one of the things that we've tried to talk about is how can we proactively treat luggage, treat backpacks, and be able to minimize the issue as students move in, they come back from vacations, and we try to take care of those issues before we have a mass infestation. So this is just obviously a possible list of locations. It will vary. It has varied for us. We have things that we have found them in that aren't on this list, but this is pretty much the common location that we look for when we go into a room and try to treat the issue. I wanted to talk a little bit about common myths that we have heard from students and parents, as well as just faculty and staff from around campus. And so one of the first things is that bed bugs live in dirty places. And as I've said a few times, bed bugs are just attracted to that warmth, the human scent, the blood, the carbon dioxide. We all know that there are those certain students who have a dirty room or a messy room. And that's not to say that the bed bugs would be there, but they don't just spawn up from dirt, and they don't just spawn up from that kind of clutter in the room. What they will come from is if a student goes out hiking, especially here in Montana, we have a lot of students who go hiking and they come back, they might bring that back with them, and they'll be found in piles on the floor, but it's not going to necessarily be the starter of the problem. The other one, as we've kind of alluded to through our experts, is that bed bugs transmit diseases. The fact is that right now, under the research we've done, there is no known research, examples, situations, or case studies that would show and prove to us that bed bugs transmit or carry diseases with them. We have had a lot of parents who call and they're very worried about their son or daughter, and they want to make sure that they aren't going to have a long-term health effect. And what we've tried to tell them is that there's not going to be a long-term health effect specifically only from bed bugs. And so it's something that we've learned and something we've tried to take care of. And the last one that I have for you is that pesticides are the best practice. We went into this thinking that pest control and pesticides were going to be the solution to our problem. And what we found is that they weren't necessarily the only thing that was going to take care of the problem. And so we did a little bit more research and we talked to a few other companies and we found that heat treatment is also a very positive outcome of treatment of bed bugs, and we try to take care of them that way. So we thought, well, maybe we'll do heat treatment. And what we have found through experimentation and through situations and examples in our buildings is that it truly is a multi-pronged approach with pesticides and heat treatment. There are pesticides that bed bugs have become immune to. They've kind of become I guess, keep walking and aren't really affected by pesticides. But what we have found is that if we do a little bit of both, that it works the best for us. So that kind of gives you a little bit of background on what we have found and the history of what we've experienced and what we've learned along the way. Wanted to talk a little bit about the bed bugs here at MSU and how our history. We used to have, and I say used to, about 2 years ago, we had a maintenance team that managed our bed bug situation. There was one maintenance supervisor. There was one assistant to help out. We would have a few situations every year. It wasn't a major issue. We didn't have a lot of problems with it. When we did have them, we were able to rectify the issue, and it never really became this big topic of conversation with our students or our staff. We would work with our local Ecolab company. They're a pest company. They would come in, they would spray the room, they would do a couple sprays in the room to try to take care of it. We would put down glue traps to see if the bed bugs were underneath the bed and if they were still there after Ecolab had sprayed. We would do a little bit of a heat treatment. We would encourage students to use the laundry machines, the washers and the dryers, do a full wash, and use the highest heat setting on the dryer, and they would do a little bit of that. But we really wouldn't treat the rest of the room. That was pretty much where we drew the line. We would treat everything that we could, and then we would switch out their mattresses. A lot of our rooms had older fabric mattresses, seams out, as I like to say. And so we had a lot of mattresses that had tears in them and rips in them and seams in them and places that bed bugs liked to crawl into and hang out. And we would see them, growing, and we would see them living in those locations. And we were really at the mercy of our Ecolab company. And so we would have a few cases, but we were really on the schedule of Ecolab. They would come in one day and they may not get back to us for 2 or 3 weeks. And in that case, sometimes students had to throw items out because that was how we managed it. We figured pesticides were treating it, and we were trying to get them taken care of as quickly as possible. But one of the things that we dealt with was that we had very limited space. As I talked about earlier, Montana State is growing. And so we would move a student to a temporary room while we treated their room because we didn't want them living around pesticides and things like that. The problem began that we didn't really have a lot of space for them to move to. And so with a few cases a year, we didn't really feel like we needed to do this massive effort to increase our ability to manage bed bugs. And students were okay with managing it over several weeks. They knew we were dealing with it. They felt comfortable with what was happening, and we felt comfortable with what we were doing. So that brings us to fall of 2016. And I don't know if anybody is aware of buildings on our campus, but Roski Hall is a pretty iconic building on our campus. Has 400 students in it. They are traditionally freshmen. And we started to get a little bit of an inkling that we had an issue in Roski. I wanted to give you a little bit of a background on our comparison before we get into the details of Roski. In the 15-16 academic year, we dealt with 15 rooms across campus. That's approximately 2,000, 2,500 rooms, including apartments, that we only dealt with 15 rooms, 15 incidents of bed bugs. And when we got into the fall of 16, we quickly realized in about 2 months that we were dealing with 26 rooms in one building that had bed bugs. Some of those, like I said, were complete infestations where we would have literally open the door and you could watch them walking across the room, to we would have a few found on the bed, or we would have one found on the pillow. And so we had all sorts of issues, but what we found is we had them predominantly on 4 floors within the building. And in our crunch, as we all may experience, we have very little movement and opportunity for moving students temporarily in the fall semester. To date in 2017 for spring, we've had 10 rooms. We've had 36 rooms total that we've had to treat, 36 incidents of issues that we've had to deal with, and those were all double rooms. So you can imagine, as we dealt with multiple students multiple times, we were dealing with a lot of day-to-day operation. I cannot tell you how many times I was here late at night or on the weekends working with our students, working with our staff, and trying to maintain the issue and make sure that it didn't get too far out of hand. So as you can see with that, we realized that we had an issue. We realized we needed to become bed bug experts, as I like to say. I tried to help a few campuses out as we've been through kind of a lot in the last year. We've learned a lot, and we've invested a lot in trying to take care of the issue at hand. One of the very first things that we did as we move into our current structure and how we're managing it is we got it out of our maintenance area and we moved it very quickly into our custodial operation. And the reason behind that movement was because we had more staff to handle the issue. One person managing it on top of their other day-to-day operation, we needed to move it out. So we trained 5 custodial leads, our custodial supervisor and myself, excuse me, and we took over the operation of bed bugs on our own. Again, like we learned a little bit before, we were still doing the pesticide treatment, but what we realized very quickly was that we were not going to be able to manage the bed bugs within the old structure of 4 to 5 weeks to manage bed bugs for one room. When we have 26 rooms over a 2-month span, we needed a much quicker turnaround. And so we ended up calling a meeting with the pest company's management, with our management here on campus. And the biggest takeaway from that, and it'll come up again, but the biggest takeaway is that reminder that they may be the experts. They may have the tools, they may have the pesticides, but we were the client, we were the customer, and we needed a faster response. So we worked with them and we came up with a treatment where they would treat it on day 1, they would wait 24 hours and they would treat it on day 2. We would wait 24 hours, we would clean the room, and we had this down to a system where we could spray the affected room and all adjacent rooms to that room, and we could have it done in about 2 to 3 days max. And so we're able to shorten up that timeline and have a much faster response time. On the screen here, you will see that we've also purchased heat tents. So the top heat tent is one that we purchased. It is the largest heat tent that we were able to find. It uses 3 heat blowing mechanisms at the bottom. And then the smaller one is one that we use for smaller items, personal items, luggage. And we're able to get through an entire room within about 3 to 4 days. The larger tent on the top there, we can treat 4 to 5 twin XL mattresses at one time. And so the goal with that heat treatment, on top of using our dryers and our laundry machines, was we needed to get all of the students' items up to 120 degrees for 20 to 30 minutes to trust that any bed bugs that were in their personal items were removed and killed before it goes back into the room. And so that was our treatment, was we needed to get to that threshold in order to know what was happening. So like I said, we basically took the entire room and moved it from 4 to 5 weeks to 5 days maximum between a heat treatment of all of their personal belongings as well as a pesticide treatment of their room and affected rooms. We've also started, several years ago, we started investing in bed bug proof mattresses. These are more of what I call plastic vinyl, but comfortable, to say the least. And then all of their seams are inseams, so there are no hiding places for the bed bugs on the exterior of the mattresses. And so we moved to this mattress, and so as we were having these issues in Roski, we would switch out the mattresses to remove any possibility of them hibernating in those mattress seams and finding a place to go. The other thing that Montana State has been able to do over the last few years, probably starting back in 2012, 2013, is that we've been able to start transitioning all of our old platform beds to new lofted beds. This is offering us an opportunity to get the beds higher off the ground. It's allowing us to use a little bit better product and allowing the minimization of bed bugs to hibernate or hide in our bed frames. And so with that has come the opportunity for us to switch everything out. We started this in Roski as we got through it, and we were able to transition everything out as much as we could in affected rooms. So that's great. We had a great treatment process. We had a great opportunity to be reactive, but we really sat back and thought, we really want to be proactive at the same time. And so we really looked at what is the education that we're doing with our students, our staff, our parents, and our campus partners to ensure that everything that we're doing is staying ahead of this instead of falling behind. And so through lots of research, we spent meeting after meeting talking about bed bugs. I cannot tell you how many weeks I have talked about bed bugs, and they become kind of a part of my job. We've trained all of our custodians on how to interact with bed bugs. We're training them on what to look for when they're cleaning the rooms over the summertime, what to look for when they have a checkout, or when they are cleaning the building over the break periods of time. We've talked about how there's no need to hide the issue of bed bugs. We found that we actually damaged ourselves, our reputation, and our department more if we hid and didn't talk about the issue versus being transparent. And so we did some training on what to say and how to say it and what some of that messaging needs to be. One of the things that we did not expect that we learned along the way is that as students are transitioning from room to room, or they're hanging out socially in a room, they could be hanging out on somebody's bed or somebody's couch for an hour watching a movie or playing a video game. And in that time, they may have attracted a carrier, as we called it. A bed bug would attract to their clothes and they would go back to their room, and it perpetuated the issue. And so instead of having one room We now had 2 rooms with bed bugs, and we didn't find it for weeks and weeks. And so we talked about education with our students and kind of training to how to watch out for that and how to keep clean clothes, wash things, make sure that they were keeping themselves organized and reducing the clutter and the opportunities for those items to kind of transmit and hibernate. On the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about our handouts, but we developed a web page, a specific web page front-facing for our department. We also developed education. We had to do a lot of education with our students and our parents. They would call us panicking. Is it life-threatening? What's the disruption to our students? What's the disruption to our family? What do I have to throw away? What do I have to purchase? And so we needed to be compassionate with the annoyance that they're having and the frustration they're having. We're having equal amounts of frustration on our end, and we're trying our best, but we were very transparent with what we were doing. We were talking through the step-by-step process of what was happening, and we didn't hide any of that. We tried to place some responsibility on the students to keep their rooms clean. We also tried to place some responsibility on the parents to work with their students, to educate them, to talk about how to prepare for winter break. When they came home and brought all these items home, how can we ensure that the bed bugs aren't going to go into their house or with their family? So we tried to educate them and talk through that a little bit. We understood that students had a disruption with class, and so talking through how to manage that as well. Like I said, we created the web page. We wanted it to be completely transparent. It is currently on our website now. It is available for students and parents to be educated on and read up on the information that we provided. And then the last thing was discussions with campus partners. That transparency that I talked about on the first bullet became very we had to get away from hiding anything or kind of covering anything up. We got calls to the president's office. We needed to educate them on how our protocol was working and what was happening there. We had to work with our Dean of Students office and the effect it might have on students. We had students that were withdrawing from the university and claiming that bed bugs was the reason that they were withdrawing. We had students that were claiming that they needed a refund of housing and room and board costs and their tuition because the effect bed bugs had on them, they needed some compensation because they were not able to focus on their academics. So we needed to do some education with them. We also want to do some education with our student ID or student CAT card office for additional funds that we placed on the cards when students needed to do laundry. We felt that because we didn't know who was causing the issue, we were going to add money to their cards so they could do laundry. We needed to make sure that they knew the accounting side of things. Facilities and safety risk management. We would have paramedics come into the building and they knew that we had bed bugs in the building, and they would ask if they were okay to treat somebody in the room, or if they needed to make sure that they didn't have protective gear on if they were going to take the bed bugs back to the hospital or back to their station. We had health inspectors from the county health department. Parents would call them. We had to work with them on our response. And finally, after all of that, if you can imagine, we had to work with our university communications department. We ended up on the front page of a newspaper, and we ended up on the front of streaming on live 5 o'clock and 6 o'clock newscasts. So we had to do some education with our communications department and talk through that a little bit. Here's a little bit of what we put together. Again, top left is our web page. It's out there currently. The bottom left is a trifold brochure that we put together based on other brochures we were able to find. And we put all of that together so it's information as we have the bed bug issues, we were able to kind of talk through that. The right two documents, the top one is our internal staff protocol, step-by-step who to call and how to do it. And our bottom one is information that we hand to students when they have an affected room. All of this, most of this information is on our website. I will have my contact information at the end. If anybody's looking for our handouts, we'd be happy to share them out to anyone and everyone. So as I thought through this a little bit, I wanted to just kind of highlight briefly a brief overview of how do we handle it on a day-to-day basis. And so the student reports it to a ResLife staff member with a possible issue. We move directly into inspecting the room. Our custodial team, our hall staff move into the room. We inspect in all of those locations that I brought up before, how we inspect the room, what we're looking for. We've trained on what the identifiers are. And then the student is moved to a new room, and we've actually blocked off specific rooms and labeled them as bed bug emergency rooms in all of our buildings. We're being proactive with that. We understand the budget implications that we have with doing that. However, we know that if we don't have the preparations for that, we will be caught off guard at some point again in the future. So they are told they can only take treated items with them to the new room. They're treated, they're taken there, and then we begin treating the items from the room that has bed bugs in it. The student is responsible for bagging up all of their items. We treat all of the items that are not clothing items, linen items, or bath towels and bath washcloths. And so they do all of that on their own in the laundry machines. We, again, give them some X amount of money on their cards to do that. We treat everything else in our heat tents. And then Ecolab is contacted to start the treatment of pesticides on that room and the adjoining rooms that are close by. So all of that is happening, and in about 3 to 5 days, we're done with all of that. And the resolution to all that is that we bring it all back. We've sprayed the room at least twice, and we've wiped the room down with our cleaning supplies that our custodians have to ensure that any pesticides that were used in the room are clean before the resident comes back. We do some additional education with floor mates. We hand out that trifold brochure to all of our students on that floor. We are very transparent with the fact that we had an issue on the floor, and this is what you can do to protect yourself. We've seen a dramatic decrease in the number of rooms that we have had to affect or had to treat because of the education and because of the discussions that they have. And I think that what we've done is, one of the discussions we had was, instead of making this a surprise to students that have it in their room, we've normalized it. And so we've actually allowed students to recognize that bed bugs are going to be a part of communal living. If you want to minimize or reduce the issue, here are steps that you can take. So as we kind of go forward, here are some lessons that we've learned. We want to be proactive and prepared. We want to have education and handouts ready to go. We want to make sure that we've done education starting at orientation in the summer with our students and our parents on what to bring, what not to bring, and how to be prepared when moving in the halls. We've talked about what handouts we want to bring, and then we've also talked about what partners we want to work with. I listed off several of them before, but we want to make sure that that education is happening. Our Parent-Family Association was one that we talked to in the fall, and they said, be transparent, put that information out there, don't hide it. They were telling us stories of how they've had it in their own towns and their own shops. And so being transparent with our parents and our other campus partners to ensure that when it does come up, we all have the same response and no one's panicking and no one's jumping through hoops to make sure we take care of the issue. One of the things that we expected but didn't expect to the extent was the disruption to classes. As I mentioned, people were asking for tuition reimbursement, housing reimbursement. They felt like bed bugs were creating this issue with them being able to focus on classes. And so we developed letters for them to take to their professors that verify and factually tell their professor that they're dealing with this issue so that they can be excused from a class if they need to deal with it right that moment, or they need a little bit of a break on a homework assignment because we've had to move them immediately, or they don't have all of their items because we're treating them in the heat tent. And so we've worked with our Dean of Students office to make sure that that language and that information is out there. We've also designated specific bed bug treating equipment. And so we've learned that we couldn't just use everyday materials and everyday vacuums. We actually have a vacuum that is designated for bed bugs. It vacuums up the room. We throw the bag outside in our dumpsters, and then we treat the vacuum in our heat tent so that we can ensure that we're not transmitting bed bugs from one room to the next or one building to the next. And so, like I said, we bought those heat tents. We've stationed them in one location in the building so that we can centralize some of that treatment and ensure that we're taking care of it. We also never had the verification that our laundry facilities, when we first started this, were reaching 120 degrees for 20 to 30 minutes. So we actually worked with our laundry facility to ensure that by a thermometer testing, that our dryers were reaching 120. We came to find out they're reaching about 150 to 170, which we knew at that point. We felt very confident with what was going on. And a lot of our proactive steps and our preparation we've learned has been because we want to make sure that when I go out and talk to a parent and I reassure them on our protocol, that I have 100% verification that what we're doing, if we follow this protocol, that we will minimize, if not completely eradicate the bed bug issue in that room. We've also done training with key staff. Like I talked about, we did 5 custodial leads, our custodial supervisor, but we trained all the way down to our desk clerk staff. So we trained our desk clerks, our program coordinators who work at the front desk. We've talked to our RAs, we've talked to our resident directors, and we've also talked to our central office administrative staff. Any one of those staff members could come in contact with a student, a parent, or one of our campus partners about this topic. And we've talked about how to answer questions, how to talk about different answers and questions that they might get based on what they're being told. And so we want to make sure, again, that that message is consistent, that everybody's on the same page, everybody has those handouts, and that we're all speaking the same language. We learned that we needed to make sure that we had a pest control company that we had a close relationship with. We would not be able to treat a room in 5 days if we didn't have that partnership. But before that, we just thought that they were the experts. They knew what to do. And so because we were waiting 2 and 3 weeks, we thought that was what needed to happen. But we stopped and we asked questions. We pushed them a little bit to make the response time better, and we created that partnership. We created a key point person. Fortunately or unfortunately, that's me, and I'm okay doing that, but it really helps streamline our communication. When parents call our main office, they know that I'm going to give them the information. The staff knows who to pass it to. When students have issues, they know that they can come talk to me, they can email me. When the staff has questions, they know that all information is funneling through me. And it's not that I have a grasp on it, it's just that I know who to direct them to or who to call for answers. We keep a running track of a spreadsheet with all of our rooms that have been affected. So I know at any one given point what status we're in with the room. So I know whether it's been treated, I know whether we're waiting on our pesticides, I know if we're halfway through our heat treatment. I know exactly where we're at so that when I'm asked for information from the president's office or the dean of students office, they know who to call and they know that I have the latest information on what's going on. Our accounting and our purchasing department, we needed to purchase all of those items for the heat treatment. We needed to make sure our contract with our pest control company was up to date. So we needed to make sure we worked with them to ensure that what was happening and the use of our purchasing cards and the use of our spaces was correct. We've had a few instances where students have had items that have been damaged in our treatment, and so we've needed to work with our accounting department to make sure those students are reimbursed for damage that we caused accidentally in the treatment and transportation of their items to and from the rooms. And then in working with our pest control company, we've talked about preventative treatments. And so ways that we can ensure that we're doing things on a regular basis, whether that's heating some of our bed frames, whether that's heating some of our mattresses, our public area furniture, the couches in your lounges, the couches in your hallways, the public furniture that might be out there. If we don't treat it the same way with the heat treatment and with the pesticide treatment, then we can't guarantee that from year to year, bed bugs aren't going to continue to be there. I would tell you in our research that we have found that bed bugs can survive for a very long time, longer than I think anybody is prepared to hear. But we were told that they could survive to up to 18 months, if not longer. And so obviously we know that our summer is only 4.5 months long. We need to make sure that we're not negating our public furniture. We can vacuum it, but we're not taking care of the seams and the crevices in our furniture. And so that was one thing that we learned very specifically that we needed to treat. So all of these items are proactive. They are things that we need to start putting into our daily routines. We've operated on a 12-month operation at this point, and we need to make sure that 12 months out of the year we're ready to respond. So we're out of our cycles and into more of a proactive response. A few other lessons we've learned is that transparency, like I talked about, we ended up in the news, we ended up in papers, we ended up on newscasts. So we wanted to make sure that we had our public relations taken care of. We wanted to make sure we were transparent. We had parents calling. We wanted to make sure that we were transparent with them and trying to be as compassionate and honest with the frustration that both the students were feeling, the families were feeling, but also we were feeling on our end. And so we wanted to make sure that all of that was out there and we weren't hiding anything. We had RAs that were telling residents, don't tell anybody that you have bed bugs. They were concerned with the spreading of the fear that somebody else would have a bed bug in their room. And not that we wouldn't have treated that, but we didn't want to set fear into a groupthink, into a communal living environment. And so we started to talk to them about, you don't need to necessarily hide it, we just need to educate to it. We need to become our everyday practice, it needs to become a part of our life. Like I talked about, we learned that multi-pronged approach is a lot better. We were all about pesticides when we first got into it, and we quickly learned that it needed to be heat treatment with pesticides, and we needed to kind of do both. And finally, in one of our lessons learned is that as we all understand on a college campus and residence halls and family and graduate housing areas and apartments, there has to be some sort of a protocol after hours and on the weekends. The same staff that might be treating it during the day is not the same staff that might be on campus at night. We were having students come to the front desk at midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., as they were getting ready to go to bed, climbing into bed, and they would see a bed bug crawl across their bed sheets, or they would crawl across their pillow. And so we wanted to make sure that we had a protocol, that our RA staff, our resident director staff, was prepared on what to look for, how to manage it. We wanted to move students in the middle of the night so that they could sleep soundly and not have to worry about bed bugs in their bed. So we talked about how to manage that. They could not take anything with them to the new room. They could take a few personal items that weren't going to be bed bug infested. They could take those with them, but we would then be in the next morning. There was nothing we could do at night or on the weekend. And so what we moved to is making sure that our staff at all levels was trained and that we had a protocol for that. Unfortunately, for some, it had become a lot of phone calls, but it was something that we needed to do in order to offer that service to our students and our parents. So I know that's a lot. I threw a lot at you. Here are some websites. We actually worked with EPA. We worked with our Gallatin County Health Department. We worked with our Safety Risk Management. We worked with health inspectors. And so, like I said, our bed bugs are on our website. We have the information out there. There are some additional resources at the bottom of that page with our county health inspectors, with the EPA. And then if anybody is looking for the handouts, I have all of that on the email address there for anybody who has questions. So I'd be happy to take those requests, and I can send you either editable or PDF versions of our documents so that you have the information. And what I would say is, just kind of wrapping up and closing, is that we have definitely had a bunch of headaches in dealing with bed bugs. But what we've learned along the way has made us stronger and has made us more responsive and more proactive. And normalizing bed bugs in our environment, normalizing bed bugs in a residence hall has become common practice for us. And it's something that we've learned has helped us become stronger, more honest and transparent, and something that as our students are moving into the halls, we're trying to educate them on and not have this fear that they have bed bugs, but truly allowing them to understand that we have a response should that happen in their buildings. So again, I thank you for the opportunity to share some of our information. I am open for questions, and I'll kind of let Shadeen guide the questions and go through them if they're out there. My contact information, either phone, email, it's up there. You can contact me after this if you have questions about it, but wanted to make sure that we've kind of transmitted as much information to you all as possible. So again, thank you, and I'll be here for some questions if there are any.
Thank you, James. We do have some questions entered into our system, but just as a reminder to those out there, please either use the chat feature or the question feature on the right-hand side of your screen, and I will read those aloud. Our first question is, after heat treatment, does this kill the nymphs and the bed bugs that are still in the eggs?
Yeah, great question. So in our research and in our experience, what I would tell you is that the heat treatment kills all of it. So no matter what stage of life the bed bug is in, the heat treatment at 120 degrees or more for 20 to 30 minutes has treated everything. And so we've seen a dramatic decrease because of that. And so it ends up killing them at whatever stage they're in.
Thank you. Our next question is the trifold on the website.
It may be, but actually as I think about it, it may not be. It is something that I can put on the website and share out. And it's a conglomeration of information we've gained. We did some research with a school in Nebraska. We also we took some other bedbug handouts and made it kind of transparent for college students. And so I will add that to the website this afternoon. And if anybody needs it, you can certainly email and I can send you out a hard copy.
Our next question is, do you have a separate protocol or approach during your summer season for summer student housing, camps and conferences, orientation?
Yeah, great question. What I would tell you is that our protocol, we really wanted it to become a 12-month protocol. And so no matter the time of year, no matter what's happening on campus, that we're able to respond at any time. And so our protocol is applicable to all times of the year. It is the same protocol if we have conferences. The benefit for at least our campus is that we aren't using all of our rooms over the summer for conferencing and summer school. And so in our summer school operation, we'll continue to operate with emergency rooms and rooms set aside for specific situations with bed bugs or other roommate issues. If we have a conference that's in a building and we end up having bed bugs in them, we will move a conference or move a guest if that's possible. But again, we'll be very transparent with the conference guides, the leaders of the conferences will be very transparent with our conference and event services office. And so we want to make sure that everybody's on board, but that education and that response will be the same no matter what period of time we're in.
Thank you. Our next question, can you provide details of the heat tent that you purchased and roughly how much that cost?
Yeah, great question. So we use, I think it's bedbugsupply.com. I think I can send that out if people are interested. We just kind of found it through some referrals from other company or other schools. I'm not going to, stand on a podium and say that they are the only ones. I would say that you can find other companies that have those heat tents. I don't have a lot of verification because I haven't used them. I would say we bought this tent and these tents from the company. They've worked, and so we haven't really tried another product. The heat treatment was costing us a little over $1,000. I think the actual tent came in about $1,200 for the tent and the 3 heaters that came with it. The smaller tents are several $100s, or the smaller heaters, but they only do a suitcase, and so depending on what you want to do and how you want to use them, I would say it depends on your budget. We didn't necessarily need the largest one before this year, but when we started getting 26 rooms in 2 months, we needed to treat multiple rooms at one time. And so we could have probably gotten away with a smaller tent or a smaller heat box in the past. But what we also found is that if we bought those smaller heat boxes, we could offer the service to heat students' belongings or suitcases when they came back from spring break or from breaks period. And so it just plugs into a regular outlet and you can basically run it for 4 to 8 hours and heat a suitcase. I would caution the larger heat tent takes 3 heaters. We actually ended up having to put them on their own circuits, so it did take some electrical work on our end with our facilities department because of the power it was drawing. We couldn't put them all on the same circuit, and so that was one step we took. But obviously every campus is different and sizes are different, but we just used that tent and those. We bought 2 of the smaller versions for smaller items that people have.
Thank you. I just want to put the offer out there again. If there's any follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out to James Tobin directly. Again, I want to thank Tobin for taking the time to share your knowledge in this area and let you know the association appreciates what you do for our members. As a reminder, this webinar was recorded and will be posted on the AIMHO 365 YouTube page, and the link is available through the aimho.org website for future review. Be on the lookout for future webinars by checking the AIMHO 365 page on our AIMHO website. And you will be receiving a survey emailed to you as soon as this session has ended. If you wouldn't mind taking a few moments to complete it, that would help us in the future. Again, a huge thank you from the region to you, James, on your presentation today. I hope everybody has a good day.
Thank you.